Okay, thank you. So now we have the lead architects of the 2025 SIAM Body of Knowledge Refresh, Claire, Michelle and Simon, who will present the project, the results and key changes of this next evolution of SIAM.
Navigate getting up here. A bit small for this. Thanks everybody, it's great to have a packed room as we just said, and we're really excited actually about being able to share some stuff with you today. Essentially what we're going to do though is put the onus back on you a little bit, and we're going to ask you some questions, and we're going to do it in a bit of a pub quiz kind of style. And well, I was going to say we have prizes, but that sounds quite lofty because that's actually not true. But Sophie does have Tim Tams. Oh. Does everybody know what Tim Tams are? Yeah, right, okay. So Australian biscuits, I mean, so we thought we'd bring some of those along, and if anybody does want to contribute and becomes quite vocal, then Sophie will oblige, I'm sure, and share those with you. So where do we start? Where are we going with this? In the beginning, so there's been quite a story. We actually were talking last night that we've been together as an architect team for 10 years, right? So there's been a lot going on, and if we think about what's been going on for all of this period of time, there's been significant change. So in the beginning, there wasn't the SIAM that we know of. Well, that's not true. It hadn't really been codified, and I think really the work that Scopism done has been really the starting point for that journey, which has been fabulous. But if we look back on pre-SIAM, one of the things we might remember, I'm just looking around the room, it's really hard for me to see, but I think there's probably a few people old enough like me to remember what it used to be like before we had multi-provider ecosystems, before we had lots of different service providers. You may well remember the mainframes and the dumb terminals with the green screens, and ITIL version 1 and process flow and all of that wonderful stuff. And of course, it's changed significantly. So pre what we had, before we came into this sort of multi-provider ecosystem, there wasn't that codification of SIAM because it probably wasn't something that we truly needed. And of course, now we've moved on. And we've been through 3 iterations now of the SIAM bodies of knowledge, and so we're really excited to share a little bit more about that with you today. What's next? All right, so we'll start with a question, actually. So back in time and history, and there's lots of people here who may well be familiar, but can anybody tell me what year ITIL version 1 was first released? Sorry, there was a hand at the back, so I'm going to go for that one. 89? 82. Close? 82. Yeah, there we go. Well done. Was that an educated guess, or either way, you've got it?
Okay, so moving on a little bit of time, if we move into this century, the noughties, which I think is a great name for a decade, we see technology changing about as fast as we change our phones these days, and providers starting to change faster than you can say contract renewal. And working in IT, that means we've got to have lots of acronyms. So in those early days, early this century, we find lots of terms and definitions and acronyms that are indicating that we wanted to bring these services together and, well, integrate them. And really that got the name SIAM, Service Integration and Management, happening, particularly within the British government, which is the source of a lot of best practices, or other words that you want to say, around that. So I guess that is a logical second question then, is when was the term SIAM first mentioned?
2015.
Earlier.
I would have said 2013.
Earlier.
2005.
Earlier.
1995.
2005, around there. We've got right here at the front. Sorry to make you work over there. Well done. So yeah, that's the first mention of SIAM, but that we didn't really have SIAM then. Claire.
So in 2016, I was working in service management and I could see SIAM developing, and I thought, you know, this looks really interesting. I think this might be the future of service management. But at the time, there wasn't anything that you could pick up as an end user and read. So if you Googled SIAM, you would find some blogs from some of the big service providers, some fairly chunky, expensive things you could buy, but there wasn't a book like there was for ITIL. So that was when the SIAM Architect group was first established. So Simon and Michelle, a huge part of that. But we had more than 40 people in that very first group from across industries, from around the world. And really what we tried to do was define what this SIAM thing is. So, you know, what does it mean? What are the roles, the challenges, the benefits? Agree. These red and green cards that you see on the table come from my stash, because we did have a lot of red and green card discussions as we defined all the terminology. But ultimately, we published the SIAM Foundation Body of Knowledge. So started writing that in 2016, published in 2017. We then announced our partnership with Exin, who are our certification partner. They offer SIAM Foundation and Professional certifications. So that's another relationship that's been there right from the very beginning. And really the key change was this idea of establishing the service integrator as a function, as a logical entity, whether it's insourced or outsourced, governing all of those service providers who make up our ecosystem, as Peter was mentioning in the keynote. And the key thing with the service integrator is they are magic, and this is testing me here. So magic, management, assurance, governance, integration, coordination
10 out of 10.
is the magic of the service integrator. So we published the foundation body of knowledge, and then we made it available free of charge from the Scopism website. Anybody could come and download it, and then lots of people came to us and said, this is brilliant, but how do I actually do this? So we reconvened the architect team, a bit like the Avengers. Everybody came back together. We had a bigger group this time, more people, the momentum started to build. And we then wrote SIAM Professional, and at the time I was engaged on another big project, so Simon and Michelle really took the lead on developing SIAM Professional, and I think we can agree that was fun. It was fun.
Always fun.
Yeah,
Hilarious,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, they look amazing for 25. It was a really smooth process. But we published the SIAM Professional Body of Knowledge, which is a chunky book, 400 plus pages, and there is a huge amount of goodness in there for people who actually want to get started with SIAM. And again, working with Exin to develop SIAM Professional, which is then that real sort of practitioner, professional level certification that tests people against a case study. So we then decided, okay, we like this big project thing. The world had moved on a little bit. There'd been some changes. I think new versions of COBIT, new versions of ITIL had come out. So we did do a refresh, which created version 2 of the bodies of knowledge. So that was back in 2019. Again, huge amount of input from all sorts of types and sizes of organisation, which for me I think is one of the most important things in terms of SIAM being something which is useful and practical and grounded in the real world rather than what somebody on their own thinks the world ought to look like. We have a principle at Scopism which is it's from the community and it's for the community, and that's something that we absolutely live by. There's no massive machine behind Scopism. The team that you see in the building today, that pretty much is Scopism, and then we have this fantastic network of volunteers like Simon and Michelle who give their time, who give their expertise, because this is something that they believe in as well. So everything we do, as much as possible, goes back to the community, and it's support from organisations like our partners that really allow us to do that. So Kinetic IT, HCL Tech, Infosys, and the people that you see mentioned as sponsors today help us to do that.
And so, moving on in this journey, if you will, we've seen lots and lots of other contribution coming into the mix, so it's great to have that body of knowledge, but I think what supports it is that others within the industry are starting to publish much more in terms of white papers, and we actually recently worked with Scopism on a white paper which is about measuring the value of the service integrator. Again, it was a community project. And many people that are here today contributed to that. But what we've seen is this additional guidance, which is of course tremendously valuable. Moving on from that, as we see sort of SIAM really sort of taking shape, many organisations, and I'm sure you're working in organisations as well that are doing this, where there's been the creation of these models to help support SIAM. So, you know, how do we actually do it? Claire mentioned before, you know, people ask the question, how do we do this thing? And so there's guidance that's emerging around the shape and scale of organisations and how they can modify their SIAM model. And certainly at Kinetic we've done that. We've introduced something called the SIAM archetypes, which is about looking at the business drivers of an organisation to determine what is the thing that's making them to move to SIAM and helping them to focus their attention on a key part of it, because of course it's really, really complex. The other thing that we can see as well is things like the emergence of maturity assessments, and there's the recent one that Scopism have produced. So all of these things are out there, they're available, they're there to share, and it can do, you know, only good things in terms of helping us to understand what SIAM is, how it works, and how we can introduce it into our organisations. So there's been a lot going on, a lot of moving parts, not only the bodies of knowledge, but everything else has sort of moved on with it, which are valuable resources for you folk.
And SIAM isn't the only thing in the world. Well, I mean, we might think different, but there are some other things that are happening as well, and sometimes they are related to SIAM, sometimes they are not related to SIAM, but they influence the way we do our service integration in businesses. So 2020 being the last update, it kind of got time to say, okay, how can we make this refreshed and ready for the future and the current organizations that we work in. So, open question. What kind of developments do you think, and if you've been an author, please don't answer, but what kind of developments are you maybe currently working with that you think should be SIAM related or adjacent? Someone's got a taste for Tim Tams. Obviously AI, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, good, we're getting going here. Give other people a chance as well to have some chocolate. Fantastic. I'll do AI and then I'll ask the question again, so it gives you a bit of thinking time there. But yes, everyone is talking about AI. You can't go anywhere or they mention it to you like it's the best thing since sliced bread. And look, to me, it's just smart technology, and it's not essentially SIAM, but it's going to change the way that we are integrating, the working practices that we have between different service providers with the customer and the things that we can do. So whilst AI isn't SIAM, it has an influence on SIAM. So you've had some time. Any other answers? There, Siobhan. Compliance and legislation, fantastic. It's up there somewhere, but just not the next one. So I'm just going to come back. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. But yes, Tim Tam for you.
I'm Simon. Shift towards experience level agreements, business level agreements.
Oh, there's someone saying experience level agreements. Yeah, the way we measure things, absolutely. So I think we don't want to run out of Tim Tams yet. We like to keep some for ourselves at the end of the day. Oh, we couldn't give them away. Okay, there's a click there. So ESG. So we have this movement which is nothing to do with SIAM. It's about how to holistically sustain an organization into the future. But it does have a lot to do with supply chain management. Who are you dealing with? What kind of business practices does your provider have? Or even where does your data go? Which brings us to legislation and other things. So we put GDPR in here since we are in Europe, but there's other legislation in other countries that have to do with what you can do with your information and how you share it with your partners and where you store it. Because when it goes into the cloud, where does it actually go? And could it end up in a country that you're at war with, or with practices around it? So these things are not SIAM, but they have a massive impact on how we do things within a SIAM environment. Bit of a hobby horse, enterprise service management. We have been talking about this probably for as long as we've been talking about SIAM, and it's starting to happen. Mind you, we've been saying that for as long as we've been saying that, but we see more implementations of service management in general in particularly transaction things like HR and finance areas, logistics, but also other parts of the business. And these SIAM principles apply there as well. So we could extend into that. And organizational change management, we've got a massive thing here that just talks about what we'll talk about again, employee welfare. But it's a massive attention point these days. How do we treat our people? How do we train our people? The hiring, the recruiting, the transition of people in there. And that is something that is related to SIAM, where you're probably in a more flexible construction here. So we have a number of what I say market influences that we thought, okay, they're not SIAM, but we can't ignore them either. We need to include them. And that's then foregoing the practices. Because yes, ITIL got updated and it might get updated again. Yeah, well, this year, next year, who knows when that's going to happen. And there's still a lot of people that look at ITIL and maybe are confused with ITIL and SIAM and stuff like that. So we can't ignore it, even though it kind of isn't that relevant in there. Any other practices? Oh, question, there we go. Any other practices that you're working with that, again, that should be SIAMized? There we go. Oh. Yeah, federated IT service management, very good. COVID, yeah, COVID.
Both of them.
Yeah, any other ones?
What about geopolitical environment, cyber affecting sourcing and procurement?
Yeah, so I'm just going to chuck that into the ESG one that we had before in there, but you're right. I mean, there's a lot of other things that are playing as well. So on the practice side, ISO 20000 has come out with part 14, hold me to it. Michelle was involved in that, which is actually referencing SIAM. So it is now part of a standard, we can say, which means that it gives it legitimacy, but it also means there are more rules in that particular area. Agile, DevOps. Problem here is that we can't really say what Agile is because it's many different things to many different people. Could be Scrum, could be DSDM or Kanban or Kaizen or Agile Shift or whatever in there. Or these days, of course, we see a lot of scaled Agile or SAFe, and it's not SIAM, but we can't ignore it. And yeah, COVID or a Lean and other things. So there are many, many different things out there that are not SIAM, but they influence the way we look at SIAM and the way we implement SIAM, and we needed to at least acknowledge that.
So, this only meant one thing, architects assemble, which is what we called our meetings. This meant it was time for another refresh, and really the key thing with the refresh was to respect what had already been done, but start to embrace some of these changes. And we'll kind of talk about the structure a little bit more, a little bit further on in the session. But one of the big things that I really wanted to do was get rid of the fact that we had two bodies of knowledge, which always led to this kind of bodies of knowledge, which felt a bit clunky. We talked about the idea that we now have one unified body of knowledge, but something that can be much more flexible. So we put the call out to the community, and I think the fact that Steph does such a fantastic job with our SIAM community, the response was just overwhelming. There's a lot of people in this room who volunteered, who've contributed. There's a lot of people on the agenda today. Thank you to all of them. But we developed a structure which was based on the architects, the lead authors, and then the author groups and the contributors, right down to, we had a role that we called debater, which was somebody who didn't have time perhaps to write anything, but wanted to turn up on phone calls and have opinions, which, that is a contribution. Yes. So the response was just fantastic, and we kicked off the refresh programme. But I think, Simon, if you want to move on, it really was trying to find a balance with respecting what was already there, but then creating something which could be more flexible and more adaptable. We started with a mantra, which was, this is a light touch refresh. Gradually, over the months, because we kicked this off in December last year, gradually over the months, the light touch refresh became slightly more medium touch. But really, it was reflecting the fact that the principles of SIAM had not changed. The environments that SIAM is operating in, the interactions that SIAM has with other technologies, operating models, frameworks, they are all different. But really, it was so important to make sure that we still stayed in the real world. And I think ESM is a good example there, because it's really exciting to talk about enterprise service management, and if you get a room full of service management professionals together, you can have a really good conversation. But we know from the research that we do, it's only a tiny percentage of SIAM models at the moment that are applied across the enterprise. Most of them are still within the technology space. So it was finding that balance between creating something which can grow as enterprise SIAM adoption grows, which we absolutely believe it will, but also making sure that we're not divorcing from what is actually out there. And we want to make sure we give people something that is practical, that is useful, that is not academic theory. It's something that they can pick up and use in their job all day, every day. And I think that balance is what we found. We had some fairly big structural changes. SIAM Professional in particular, we moved some of the chapters around to improve the flow. But I think for both Foundation and Professional, the percentage of change is probably 20-25% max, just tightening them up, refreshing them, updating some of the examples. And what we found over the months is we moved from conversations about a restructure to conversations about a chapter to conversations about a section in a chapter, and then by the end of it we were just arguing about words, really. one single word, and we'd argue until one of us just got bored and gave up. But we knew, because that was happening, we knew that the process was going well, and by the time we're arguing about one word, we know we're about there.
Absolutely. So we've already alluded to the fact that we've got this layered model, and I think this is what is going to give us the benefit of that longer term agility and the ability to be able to flex. So at the core is where you've got your SIAM Foundation and SIAM Professional. So that's about the core integration theories, and Claire's already alluded to it. There wasn't a lot that needed to change. Those core concepts, those ideas are actually solid. And so having those sat in the centre, if you like, gives us the opportunity to keep that fairly sort of static, but then evolve and shape around the outside. So what we've got is this separation across the core, and then we've got this additional and expanded layers, if you will, where we have got more of the practical guidance that was mentioned before. We do see the application of things that might be universally appropriate or might be quite locally geographic, but they've come from expertise from an industry or region, and it's still valuable stuff, but it's not necessarily the stuff that you want to sit in the core guidance, but we put it out there and we can publish it, which is great. So we've already mentioned the fact that we like to separate the theoretical, because we have got theoretical stuff as well, from the more practical, and that's what we were able to do with this model, which was fantastic. So what about the changes? Essential SIAM theory sits in the centre, if you like, that the professional and the foundation, and Claire's already mentioned, we are now sort of collectively calling this the body of knowledge, so all of the books would form the body of knowledge, and we've made some changes there. So what we've got is this idea that we moved out some of the content that did sit in the main books, because it was subject to change. It could date the guidance. So we removed things like the practices. So there was a section called SIAM and the practices with some of the things that Simon has mentioned there. And we've actually put that into one of the compendium guides as a separate document, because it's valuable, but it's probably likely to change. We've also done things like updates. So Claire mentioned that there wasn't a lot that was wrong per se, but as we evolve and learn more stuff, we started to recognise that we were being told about more types of service integration structure. So we had sort of 4 core types, but now we're recognising that there could be this idea of a hybrid service integrator or a hybrid lead supplier. And so that addition was sort of made it into the new guidance as well. Now, of course, all of this is controlled by Scopism, who generously produce and dedicate time to making this available. And I think you've used the term before, by the community, for the community, which I think is really, really, a strong, strong thing, and we're really very proud of that. I think the only thing I wanted to add there is the starting point. So we actually started back in November 24, and I think, we trickled through when we let people put their hand up and say that they'd like to be part of it. But that brings me, I think, nicely to a bit of a question, if I may. Has anybody got any idea how many people registered to support this guidance or producing the guidance? Not you, Steph. You can have a biscuit later.
160.
You're close.
Lower.
Yeah, slightly lower.
Not much.
No.
120.
Oh, in the middle there, Paul. One more.
140.
Way, give that man a biscuit. Fantastic. So we did have this, huge group of volunteers, which is fantastic. It does sort of ebb and flow a little bit, but that was really, really important because it helped us to achieve what we've got here in terms of breadth of experience. So, as I say, what we've got is the essential SIAM theory. We've got the stuff that goes around the outside, and we keep the core also to make sure that we can retain, the accreditation. So people are doing certificates and this stuff, and they don't want to have to flex and change and get a new qualification if it's not completely necessary. That doesn't mean don't read the guidance. You should. And if there's an exam, you should take it. But that's essentially where we were going with this.
So yeah, the core represents the stable element in there. We did a refresh. We did make changes. We moved some stuff around. We changed the order. We made it more modern. But really, the exciting part is in that additional layer, which we call compendiums, because this is where we go into SIAM adjacent kind of theory in there, and we talked about some of the market developments in there, where we could go practical, we could go more specific, maybe even limited to a particular market segment or a geography, but this is still a part of the SIAM body of knowledge in there. So, question comes later. I thought I had it down pat. So these publications can be changed. So we expect to see changes to these compendiums. So there'll be a number of them that will be released, have been released today with this version in there, but we'll see them change and being added and removed as time goes by, mainly through the community. This wonderful community that we have of, 4,200 and something people that have knowledge to share, and they can add to these compendiums in there. They form a part of the body of knowledge, but they are not core for the accreditation. So you don't have to redo your SIAM Foundation every year because there's something new in AI or a new legislation in Europe around there. So giving you a few hints already, and if you were an author or a contributor, please don't answer this. What kind of compendiums would you like to see? SIAM adjacent white papers, documents, publications. AI. Yes, absolutely. I saw a hand, but you're putting your jacket on. Fair enough. So yes, AI is definitely one of them. The other practices, and we've expanded them as well because there's a lot these days, but we are very happy to get things like humanizing IT and design thinking methods in there as well to say, okay, what does this practice have to do with SIAM? How can we get the best of both worlds in there? We took the white paper on the integrator measurements, and that's been expanded to look at the whole SIAM model and doing end-to-end measurement with a lovely performance management framework around there. Obviously OCM, because there is so much to say about organizational change management. It's so important, and a lot of organizations still don't pay attention to it, so that needed to get a place. We've got to borrow AI, well that's not bad. But there are, quick calculation, 14 compendiums that are being released, were released today, as well as an updated SIAM Foundation and SIAM Professional. Now, the third layer, I wouldn't say afterthought because that's not very kind. Well, we didn't have a lot of time with that, but this is a layer where we basically leave it up for the SIAM community, again, as that central 4,000 strong expertise, to start offering even more specific elements in there that could potentially be an opinion, like a discussion paper, or a very specific solution, maybe even a sponsored solution in there. So there is room for that in the structure, but we don't see them as kind of a stable or I don't know, confirmed, validated part of the body of knowledge, but we do see them as value add in there. So we wanted to make some room for that as well, and within the SIAM community there'll be opportunities for you to basically add your discussion paper or your things to be kind of still an official SIAM publication, but in the outer layer. And this means you can just look there and you may find something that helps you or a template. So we got at the core, the compendiums, and then more. What's not to like? And yeah, that's what I just said in there.
Okay, so today the body of knowledge has been revealed. It's in the community, it's there, you can download it all. And just to kind of build on what Simon was saying there, is the compendiums, this is just the first drop. So we had some compendiums that didn't make the release date. We've got a list of topics, so what you will see from 2026 onwards is we'll stand up the Content Council, and those compendiums and that additional content will continue to develop. But yes, the white paper is there, and if you're in the community, you should already have been added to the space. If you're not in the community, why not?
Excellent. So we've already talked about that. I gave you the facts and figures on that. We had 140 people that started the journey with us. But I wanted just to encourage you with a little bit more detail about the fact that you should get involved. So Claire's already alluded to it. It's not once and done. There's going to be way more opportunity. So if you've got content that you think is important as a SIAM adjacent topic, then we absolutely want to get that feedback. Just so that you know what you're letting yourself in for. When we did this particular refresh, what we did is we worked it all out into chunks. So there was a group of people that worked on the foundation, there was various people who worked on professional, and then there was groups that worked on the compendiums. And for each of those groups, we had a lead author, or in some cases, lead authors. And to support them, then there were contributing authors, there were reviewers. Claire mentioned there we had people called debaters that popped up as well, and they all took on different roles, but they self-managed, which was fantastic. So we had these work packages, and we sort of kept the teams working together, and we had constant discussions and monthly get-togethers as cohorts, and then they individually sort of did work amongst themselves as a team. And we had lots and lots of discussions, and we kept the rest of the community abreast of what was going on with newsletters and such like, so that everybody was fully on top of it. We got to about July, I think, this year, where we thought we're going to have to start to pull all of this stuff together, lock it down, and that really has been a bit of a sprint from July until now to get the books to where we wanted them to be, to bring them all together and make sure that they were fluid and could coexist quite naturally. So lots and lots of different activity happening there. But the point is, if you're thinking about contributing and you haven't, you wouldn't be alone in doing it. It's it's an amazing community. You know from being in this room that everybody is super, super supportive. And so it's a great opportunity to just get involved, extend your knowledge, extend our knowledge, and that's what we're hopeful for. So that's a bit more about the journey.
So yes, in summary, and we've kind of talked about most of this, the SIAM Foundation has been refreshed in there. So it's been streamlined. Got rid of the other practices, got rid of the processes. They're in a compendium now because this is the core of SIAM. But having said that, when we started reading it, it talked about SIAM as being new and different. We said, no, it's not. It's a strategic element of any organization. It should be part of your operating model. So we did change the positioning without changing any of the core concepts in there, and we did allow some more flexibility because we've seen hybrid lead suppliers and stuff like that we couldn't really think of 10 years ago in there. So it's lovely, refreshed. It's a really good book to read and give to someone who's never heard of SIAM, who wants to know the basics of it. The professional, yeah, I wouldn't give that to someone who's never read it. It's still a very chunky book with a lot of information in there. We have adjusted the flow, we've made all the updates, there's some information from the compendiums has flowed into professional and vice versa in there. And it's a great reference book. If you're looking for a bit of detail about something, you find the section in the professional, you read that, there are plenty of examples in there, and then possibly there's a compendium, because that is then the big edition now. There's 14 compendiums, so 16 documents in total out there, including AI, including procurement, which I haven't mentioned before. In there, we talk about skills, SIAM skills in there. Anyway, 14 of them. Experience management, there at the back. We've got experience management, we've got a compendium for that as well. And these really provide that, taking SIAM into those areas or bringing those areas into a SIAM context. And that just makes it so much richer. And that's also where we see the flexibility. Like, as the world changes, these compendiums will change, and hopefully the foundation will never change. We've had enough of that for now. But you never know in there. So that's out there today in the SIAM community. And I do want to, first of all, because I don't think I've got any more slides in there, I want to thank everyone who has contributed, because it's a fantastic community performance, really, a collaboration of doing that. I want to thank staff for doing the SIAM community, but I also want to thank Claire and Scopism for making this available for free, which is really wonderful, because that really makes it a community thing in there, and I think that is still relatively unique and wonderful. Anyway, that's me.
Maybe we should have authors standing up.
Oh yeah, we can do that. Can anyone who has contributed for on this version of SIAM just stand up?
Don't be shy.
So if you have any
Not
questions,
you, Jeff,
questions whatsoever, ask any of these people. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, all of you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, guys. Does anybody have any questions?
Just one more minute. That was me finished. I like to finish with a flurry, but there's more to come. As you get, Claire.
Yes, so as we've said several times, everything happens in the community now. It's the hub of everything that we do. It is free to join. The link is there. It is a friendly place to go ask questions, to go answer questions. We've got virtual events happening pretty much every week. We've got SIAM socials where people can hang out. It's just a fantastic place to be. It's super, super friendly. And from a kind of a professional development perspective as well, definitely something that can help if you're managing a team, to encourage them to get involved as well. So yes, if you are not already in there, join the community. If you want to ask any questions, Steph at the back is our community manager. She will be happy to answer them.
That's it.
Okay.
I think that is. Thank you for playing along with us. Yeah, thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for these guys? Don't all raise your hands at once. Oh, there we go.
Any timeline for print versions?
For what, sorry?
Print versions.
No, the current status of print versions is we have renewed our contract with IT Governance Publishing, who do publish hard copy versions which are available to purchase for people who like a book. So the contract's been renewed. They will be publishing Foundation and Professional definitely. So I would hope that will be reasonably swift. I would expect maybe Q1 next year. In terms of the compendiums, that's still a bit of a discussion that we're having, because the content in the compendiums will be more fluid. They may choose not to take those, or one of the things we have discussed is bundling some of the compendiums together, so that then it becomes a bit more like a book, because some of the compendiums, they vary between kind of 40 to 100 pages, so they don't necessarily make a good book at the moment, but definitely Foundation and Professional, hopefully some of the compendiums, and I would expect early next year.
If I can take the timeline question further, Exin is working on the accreditation.
Yep.
So same thought to be light touch. We don't want people to necessarily have to redo their SIAM Foundation or professional in there, but there also is an opportunity to look at how can we change some of the accreditation, which is what Exin is doing. So there is no timeline, it'll be imminent. They're working very hard on it, but news still to follow. And similar with the compendiums, because there is of course a more variable element, but there's a nice opportunity to do some micro-credentials or some other opportunity around those compendiums as well. So basically we don't have anything concrete to tell you at this point, but there is work being done behind the scenes. Someone is paddling really hard.
Yes.
Any other questions?
No? Okay. Thank you very much, guys. Very much appreciate that. I'll give everybody